We're going to get underway in about a minute or so. Good morning, everyone. We'll get this meeting of planning and housing underway. It's good to see everyone. So we'll start the meeting first just with the quick acknowledgements. We acknowledge that Ottawa is located on unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people nation, whose culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. Il est important de souligner que la ville d'Ottawa se trouve sur un territoire non cédé de la nation algonquine Anishinaabe, dont la culture et la présence sont enrichies et continuent d'enrichir ces terres. We've received regrets this morning from Councillor Gower, Vice Chair Gower. I'll ask the committee coordinator to do the roll call.
Councillor Brockington.
Here.
Councillor Curry. Here. Councillor Dudas. Here. Councillor Johnson. Here. Councillor Kavanaugh. Here. Councillor Kelly.
Present.
Councillor Kitts.
Here.
Councillor Lowe.
Here.
Councillor Tierney.
Present.
Councillor Troster. Here. Vice Chair Gower and Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. I'll just note that in Vice Chair Gower's absence, I've asked Councillor Johnson to vice us and make the technical motions, etc. This is a public meeting to consider the proposed comprehensive official plan and zoning bylaw amendments listed as items 4.1, 5.1, and 5.2 on today's agenda. For the items just mentioned, only those who make oral submissions today or written submissions before the amendments are adopted may appeal the matter to the Ontario Land Tribunal. In addition, the applicant may appeal the matter to the Ontario Land Tribunal if council does not adopt an amendment within 90 days of receipt of the application for a zoning bylaw amendment and 120 days for an official plan amendment. To submit written comments on these amendments prior to their consideration by City Council on April 12th, 2023, please email or call the committee coordinator. There are declarations of interest. None received. Confirmation of the minutes for meeting 4, Monday, February 27th, 2023. Are those confirmed? Okay. Postponements and deferrals. The zoning bylaw amendment for 360 Kennedy Lane East, we're going to hold that one because we have a number of delegations. Take two. For the zoning bylaw amendment for 262 Armstrong Street, there is a technical motion to correct the date the report rises to council. There are no delegations and no correspondence. Does anyone wish to hold this item? No. We have the applicants with us. If the committee is prepared to carry this, do you still wish to speak?
No, Mr. Chairman, I do not.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hume. There's the technical motion. Can I get that put forward now by Vice Chair Johnson?
Thank you. So whereas report ACS 2023 PREPS 0027 lists the item be considered at the City Council meeting on March 22, 2023, and whereas the report should have listed the item as rising to the City Council meeting on April 12, 2023, therefore be it resolved that report ACS 2023 PREPS 0027 be amended with the new adjoining City Council date of April 12, 2023, and be it further resolved that pursuant to subsection 3417 of the Planning Act, no further notice be given.
Thank you very much. Is that amendment carried? And is the item carried as amended?
Carried.
For the zoning bylaw amendment at 325 Elgin Street, there's no delegations and no correspondence. We have the applicants with us. If the committee is prepared to carry this, do you still wish to speak? I believe Tom is with us.
No, Chair.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
Sorry. No, we have nothing to add, Chair.
Thank you very much. Does anyone want to hold this item for discussion? No. There are no technical motions on it. Is that item carried? There is the 2022 annual report pursuant to the Building Code Act. There's no presentation, no delegations on that item. Does anyone wish to hold it? No. Is that item carried? Thank you. And the item today is the Municipal Housing Pledge, 2031 Municipal Housing Pledge. We need to move that to add it to the agenda. Can I ask Vice Chair Johnson to make that motion?
Whereas the report from Planning, Real Estate and Economic Development Department entitled 2031 Municipal Housing Pledge ACS 2023 PRE-EDP 0009 was issued subsequent to publication of the Planning and Housing Committee Agenda Number 5 and distributed to members and published with the revised agenda on March 15th, 2023. Therefore, be it resolved that the report entitled 2031 Municipal Housing Pledge ACS 2023 PRE-EDP 0009 be added to the agenda pursuant to the procedure bylaw subsection 89.3 in order to consider the matter prior to the submission deadline on March 22, 2023.
Thank you very much. Is that carried?
Carried.
Carried, thank you. So we'll add that to the agenda. There is a presentation that we've asked staff to make on the municipal housing pledge. So we'll hold that until the appropriate point in the agenda. So moving back through the Kennedy Lane East bylaw amendment. We do have delegations on that one. I don't see a lot of point in asking staff to make the same presentation. So with the committee's approval, I'd like to move just straight into delegations. See nodding heads. So we'll go first to, do the applicants wish to make a presentation? We'll just give them a moment to come into the room. I see Carly and Andrew. Did you wish to address this item with the delegation this morning?
Yes, sure. Absolutely. I just wanted to start off by saying appreciating all the work that we've done with staff and bringing this item back to the agenda this morning, and all the work that we've done with some of the surrounding neighborhoods. But we are happy to bring this back to today, but also with the the idea that it was outlined in the letter that was submitted to the committee, but that we're happy to work with staff moving forward, making sure that there's no monitoring the parking situation along Kennedy Lane, but on our internal site specifically to have a screening process in place for tenants. So we'll be monitoring which tenants have cars and do not have cars, and should we not have any available space, have an ability to monitor that situation in case, so that there is no external pressure put on the surrounding public streets, but also making sure that new tenants have an understanding of what transits in the area and promoting the OC Transpo Pass, but also the Eco Pass for the affordable tenants as well, should they qualify. And also having a dedicated space, a car share space, if and when the service extends into Orleans. And we've had a few conversations with Communauto specifically on that front. They don't have any service in the area currently, but when they do, we're happy to have that space on our site, and that, as staff outlined in their letter as well, that's one of the points of the site plan agreement. We'll have that in there.
Thank you very much, Carly. Do any members of the committee have questions for the applicant? Councillor Curry?
Thank you for that. I'm glad that that was worked out in the meantime. It's what we were looking for, I guess, as some kind of understanding. I guess I just wonder, what is the follow-up though, as the years go by on this? I mean, buildings stand for 100 years and these kinds of things continue. What would be the follow-up with people who live there for 5 or 6 years and end up getting a second car, and how would that all work?
To the chair, I think that's one of the benefits of it being a rental property, is we can manage it a little bit more in depthly than a for sale property, and making sure that tenants have that space. But also, should there be a tenant with multiple cars that are causing external pressure on other places, we have that ability to have that conversation with those residents as well, and monitor the situation. And then if there is an issue, the church is still heavily involved with the process, and will be the owner of the land, so we can have those conversations should that arise, and be available to the neighborhood should there be external issues as well.
Thank you for that. So just to be clear, so that would be something that would be worked into their lease, so they would understand that that is something that will be ongoing monitoring?
Yeah, so all the parking spaces are not a part of the lease, so they're additional rent. So we'd have an ability to monitor who's renting those spaces. So there is no parking included in their lease, and there will be a part of the lease that says, or there will be information as part of the lease that says that there's a limited number of parking spaces on site, so that should you have more than one car, you might not be accommodated here.
Okay, all right. I wish you luck with that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Curry. Are there any other questions for the applicant? I don't see any, so we'll move into public delegations. And the first of which is Jim Rycroft, who I believe is here. There's Jim. Good morning, Jim. Welcome to the Planning and Housing Committee. You have 5 minutes to make a presentation to the committee, after which time members of the committee may choose to ask you questions. Please proceed.
Thank you. Good morning. Presentations to this date, which I've been submitting for just a little over a year now, have not caused alarms to go off. Then perhaps what I say in the next 3 or 4 or 5 minutes won't make much difference either. However, I would like to summarize, if I can, the points that I'm trying to make. Now, you've received a memo that I believe was designed to address your concerns that you had in the February 27th meeting. I had a copy of that sent to me, as I appreciate, and I've gone kind of point by point through it. I'm not going to do that today. Let me say I agree with the first point. We need affordable housing, more affordable housing. After that, if you want to ask me what my position is on any one of the other ones, I would invite you to do so, but I'm not going to go through them. I have a comment to make on every one of them, which I think should raise some concern. Of course, that is up to you. So the engineers and the planners who do this are delegated with the authority to determine all these issues. That's been downloaded, in fact, legislatively downloaded. Nevertheless, you are still responsible. So here's what I think are the technical errors in the TIA, the Transportation Impact Analysis. And that the triggers in the guide were not used to conduct a full assessment. And by ignoring those criteria, I think that it is maybe a slight exaggeration, fatal flaw to where we're going now. Specifically, the 0.75 parking spaces per unit, an urban exception. This is based not on local reality, and I can give you examples, and I already have in my previous presentation. I've done it ad nauseum in my written presentation for Coburn Heights Affordable Housing Complex nearby. Plus, we're not urban. The area that is now repurposed by the city plan is to the north of here. It's along the LRT corridor. Where outside of that, we are suburban. And believe it or not, there is a difference. So suburban data shows us, and I've got the citations in my written material, that you pretty much need 2 parking spaces per affordable unit as a minimum real world requirement. You've only got 31% affordable unit here. So it's only those ones that might, in a perfect world, have 2 or possibly less, but real world experience in the Orleans area says 2 and pressure for more. Dave Lewis, Cumberland councillor formerly and general manager of the cited examples, he's a subject expert. When I don't know, I go to him and ask because he's lived this for the last number of years in both implementing affordable housing and conducting it and generally managing as a general manager, doing it today in a cost-effective way. It's not going into debt, it's generating funds. So 61 vehicles apparently isn't enough to trigger a study, but beyond any doubt, in my opinion, there's going to be more vehicles, at least 2 per unit in the affordable. And as I've just suggested, more so based on the real world data that's in my written presentation. That means that 266% more than the calculated 0.75 are going to be flooding onto the nearby streets because you can only put 61 into the parking. That's why I've made the suggestion since over a year ago that we scale this back to 54 units, all affordable. You want affordable housing? Let's have 54 units, 2 times what the United Church wants. But 54 units will fit better, not perfectly, into the 61 spaces. And the overflow, which will create a hazard and so forth, is at least reduced significantly. So failure to take responsibility to correct these errors, I think, is the sort of thing that the OLT might be interested in. They clearly don't worry too much about what you are doing. You can build anything you like as long as you are following the rules. But I'm suggesting here you are not following the rules. And even if they don't see it as I submit, then the no risk still bothers me. I thought that at least after the last time I explained all the risk and the concerns of 900 plus people, plus our counselor, that you would find a risk, maybe an acceptable risk, but some kind of risk, not no risk. And so with that, I'm suggesting that your lawyers have a look at it. I've asked the mayor to have your lawyers. I've asked you to have a look at it. Hasn't happened. I'm looking for due diligence. I'm not seeing what I consider due diligence. Do I know the answer to this? Absolutely not. But I've suggested that there are those out there who should be and should have been involved in the process. So if there's any questions here challenging any of my facts or conclusions, as I've repeatedly said, please ask me. I was 5 seconds over last time. Sorry about that. You can have it back today. I'm done.
Thank you very much, Jim. Are there any questions for the delegate? Don't see any. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Giselle Doyle, who I believe is online. And just for those watching, after Giselle, there will be Richard, Miranda, Brandon, then Joseph.
Hello.
Hi, Giselle. Welcome to Planning and Housing Committee. You have 5 minutes to make a presentation to the committee.
Hi. Good morning. My name is Giselle Doyle. I'm an advocate for the rights of people with developmental and neurodivergent disabilities, particularly the right to live in an inclusive and affordable home, and the right to decide where and with who they live with as independently as possible. I'm pleased to hear that this file is closer to being approved. As indicated to our counselors, other inclusive affordable projects downtown, such as Beaver Barracks, have a ratio of 0.4 parking space per unit. And the Barrhaven multi-faith housing project has 0.75. What keeps me going other than our son? I'll give you a couple of examples. The latest being a person with a disability working at Value Village, asking me on Facebook, when's moving day? And another one whose parents had him move back to Orleans from an inclusive and affordable unit downtown in order for him to be closer to his job at an Orleans supermarket and for them to be able to assist him when he needed. If you are a counselor that is 45 years old or under, our family's members' approximate age, I want you to imagine you are still living at home as you can't afford to move out and are afraid to, as you've known no other life. Now, imagine being a parent, 65 years or over, haven't had or having health problems, thinking what is going to happen when we're gone? We lived that 10 years ago, but fortunately, we were guided by a support worker who convinced us to think outside the box and help my son find an apartment and help him get to the independent life he is living now. Don't get me wrong, we are still very involved in his daily life, ensuring that he has a social life, helping him find a job, providing a disability service worker to help him with his life skill. And of course, we do the overnight calls when needed. It's time to help the families in our group to be able to do the same for their loved ones. But first, we need housing in Orleans. Please follow up on the request from the planning staff and approve this amendment to continue with this important project. Thank you, the Orleans Independent Living Advocate Network. Thanks you for considering this.
Thank you very much, Giselle. Does anyone have questions for the delegate? Seeing none, I appreciate your presentation today, and we'll move on to Richard Rice, who I understand has a presentation to make, and who is here with us in the room. Good morning, Mr. Rice.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
You have 5 minutes to make a presentation to the committee.
Thank you. I'll begin by saying, since the inception of this committee's involvement in this file, I've been trying to determine what its motivation was. Now I believe I know. The official plan and the city seek to impose urban constructs on suburbia. This is wrong. Residents in the suburbs live there because they have made a conscious choice to reject the stress of the urban environment in favor of a more relaxed, slower paced lifestyle. Be clear, we don't want to live in the big city, and we don't want the big city brought to us. These are essential concepts. We object to intensification, whether it be a more crowded living facilities or a place for the family minivan. Likewise, we reject the idealistic concept of the 15-minute urban village. What works in the city will meet with egregious disfavor in the suburbs. It already has, as witness our 900+ signature petition. Chair, these are storm clouds. We don't want intensification and reject it outright. Another effect is the latent effect on the private motor vehicle. Zealots have plotted an either-or conflict scenario between vehicles, parking, housing, and green spaces. This is false equivalent. Both can be accommodated with sensitive insight and planning, which is now lacking. It is good to have transportation options, such as the LRT and OC Transpo, but that's exactly what they are. They are options. However, the automobile is an essential staple of family life and must remain so. A busy family relies upon their vehicle to sustain itself. be it kids hockey, dance lessons, or just a big old load of groceries. It's important. Likewise, seniors, especially those who are mobility compromised, rely on it. Rely on it to remain active in the community with wider choices for recreation and services. Vehicles are now smaller, environmentally friendly, and will soon become 100% green electric. Hence, new constructions need, I should say, requirement for electric charging facilities. I urge all councillors to take the planning staff's counsel under advisement, but more importantly, to listen to residents of both urban and suburban lifestyles and to respect their life choices. We made compromises way back during amalgamation, and I believe so must you. False accusations of NIMBY are not helpful and only cause resentment and division. Yes, build this housing. We want it. We need this housing and we need more. But I urge you, build with the community and not against it. Chair, I brought along a slide today to address, Kelly, if you have that. It was a bar slide. There we go. This represents a comparison of the proposed parking using the 0.75 ratio with the some real life situations. Now, what I'd like to do is to, my time's running short. I'd like to cite information we obtained from Dave Lewis, the general manager of the Cumberland Housing Corporation. And I believe you have this, this document, which represents his text, but I'll just read the bottom part of it. To say that affordable tenants or any tenants have fewer cars is totally not correct. To deny occupancy because an affordable applicant or a regular applicant has a car is totally unacceptable. And he goes on to say all my rent applications, all of them require notification of vehicle registration. Not a single applicant has indicated that they do not have a car. And with respect to that previous point, a possible situation could arise where someone is who requires a vehicle for work is denied housing. And I suggest to you that is that could be a possible issue of discrimination. How's my time? Let's get into detail on these slides.
Sorry, Richard, you are out of time at this point. Can I just ask you to wrap up quickly?
That is all I have at this time. I would be glad to entertain any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee members for Mr. Rice? I don't see any. Thank you for your presentation today. All right. Next up is Miranda Gray. I believe Miranda. Oh, sorry,
Hi,
Lynn.
can you hear me? Can you hear me, Chair?
I had a question, but that's okay. If we had moved on, that's fine, Chair.
No, Mr. Rice is still at the desk.
Oh, okay. So thank you, Chair. I just wanted to pick up on this, on the idea of choice and urban suburban living. I struggle a little bit to equate affordability and housing with choice right now. I did used to live downtown and my choice was to start a family. And so to be able to afford a home, I did move to a suburb. That was the choice I made, to find affordability to start a family. So I just wonder then, Richard, for those in my shoes who are looking for an affordable place to live and want to have a family, where do I go if I still want to be close to others or have those kinds of community connections? What kinds of choices am I afforded when I'm looking for an affordable place to live with amenities that I can get to easily? I fear that when we create urban suburban divides, we don't get at the core issues of livability, affordability, and common ground. So I ask you, where do I go then? Please.
Well, Counselor, I'm not an expert. I could only offer a personal opinion, but I can tell you about my experience living in the suburbs, not in a confined urban setting, and it seems much better suited to a number of issues, to raising children, to having more wide open spaces for to parks, to recreation. It's much safer on the streets, less traffic. It's quite common to see some kids down at the end of our street with their hockey net out, playing hockey in the middle of the street. I shudder to see what would happen if they were try that on a busy city street. It's more relaxed. It's more conducive to a healthier lifestyle, in my opinion, for a family, for seniors, and for others. I don't say don't live in the city. Many people like that. Many people like having the idea of everything close at hand. But there are trade-offs with everything. A good example would be this issue of parking that we just talked about. The real life situation with parking is actually 3 times greater than the 0.75 that's been quoted in the report. But again, to answer your question, I'm not an expert, but if you want an opinion from someone who's lived in the suburbs for a number of years, I recommend it far and away over the city environment.
I guess I just mean to suggest that, you know, I did live downtown. I couldn't afford to stay there. I chose to move to a suburb, and I still want to create a neighborhood where I have convenience, colleagues, you know, community, safety, all the different values that I bring to a suburb in the same way that I used to live downtown. And so I think we actually do have more in common. And I would welcome us to, you know, engage in some of this density with open hearts. My neighborhoods also have parking issues, without a doubt, and that's a different kind of conversation for today. But I appreciate you coming and sharing your perspective. Thank you.
Yes, well, thank you for sharing that, Councillor, and certainly I respect your view. I don't agree with all of it, but at the same time, I'd like you to appreciate the injection of a high density housing complex with 81 units into a relaxed 2-story neighborhood like ours is going to cause challenges. And as I said, the family automobile is an essential part of family life, of suburban life. And to say that we're going to monitor it, to say we're going to have dialogues, that's fine, but it's hopelessly inadequate. When you go to an establishment like Coburg Heights, which is less than a kilometer away from 360 Kennedy site, that has 3 times and that's measured in real life numbers today. What's expected for 360 Kennedy, it's not realism. It just doesn't make sense.
Thank you very much, Lane. I'll just remind members of the need not to veer into debate. It's a Q&A opportunity. Are you done? Excellent. Mr. Rice, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Have a good day, sir.
Miranda Gray, I believe, is joining us online.
Hi, Chair. Can you hear me now?
We can. Thank you. You have 5 minutes to make a presentation to the committee.
Thank you. My name is Miranda Gray. I live in Orleans West Innis, and I live in some of this, what we're calling density co-op housing. I speak in favor of this applicant and in favor of making no further changes and approving it as is. It is not impossible to live in the suburbs without a car. I am one of those people. Feel free to ask me about it. But this discussion is about people and housing. So I'd invite you on the committee to close your eyes and think of the worst family vacation you have had. Maybe you were stuck in a tent and it rained all week and you couldn't get away from each other. Or you were in a hotel room and you couldn't get away from each other. That's what it means to be underhoused for some of the families in our town. It also means that you can't be independent from your parents because you can't find anything affordable. What we are talking about here is a modest increase in density to allow a bunch more people to have that independence and live on their own in a community that they would like to be in. So I'd like us to focus on the people, not the cars. On the subject of cars, you can live without a car. Most of the car problems I have seen as someone on transit going past this site are caused by the recreational facilities in the area, the people that are driving in for soccer. We see that where I live as well, is that we get periodic problems as people are trying to park for a sports game. Living in a neighborhood does not give you first right to the street parking. It belongs to everyone that lives in that area, whether you've lived there 10 years, 1 week, or 100 years. It's a shared resource and no one has more call on it than others. If you're going to make special rules for this development, you need to make special rules for every house. You can't park more cars than you can park on your property would be a good rule. That would apply to this corporation, that they can only rent as many spots as they have. And it would apply to houses in the neighborhood that they can't have more cars than they are willing to park in their garage and in their driveway. We don't have separate rules for separate types of living. This is not about parking, it's about homes. Please focus on the people that will get homes through this process rather than what we're going to do with cars, because this is not about cars. That's a possession. It can survive being outside and you can live without it, but you need to have a home if you're a human. And this city needs to act to make sure that its residents have homes. Please pass this today so that we can move ahead and so that there are no more costs borne by the developers, so that they can put money into other projects. Every delay here costs them time. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you very much, Miranda. Are there any questions for the delegate? See none. Thank you very much for your time today. Brandon, I believe Brandon Bay is online. Just joining us now.
Hi, yes, good morning.
Brandon, welcome to Planning and Housing Committee. You've got 5 minutes to make a presentation.
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. I'm Brandon Bay. Met some of you as a candidate for mayor last year, running on a lot of the issues that we're talking about for housing here. And I've been working with Make Housing Affordable to talk about solving the housing crisis since then. Naturally, I'm speaking in favor of this project, as several of our delegates did last time around, and I'm glad to see it back on the docket so soon. This is a church doing right by its community during a housing crisis, and it's just, a clever way to help its community with the spare land it's got and add some extra housing in a wonderful community for a lot of new residents. And delays on this are costly for the city and for the developer, and I was worried that we might lose the solar panels and the net zero aspect of the project we saw and see it get a little worse by delays. So I'm hopeful that by moving it forward today, that won't be the case. But it's just everything the official plan wants us to be building. It's everything we want to see in suburban intensification. It's low-rise forms that fit into the community, even though it's zoned for higher and they could have built taller if they wanted to. It's dense, it's served by transit, it's walkable, it's hopefully very green. It maintains parking for the market rate units while moving us slowly towards safer streets that have fewer cars on them. And it's very close to the Orleans-Cumberland Community Resource Center, which means it's an incredible place for affordable housing that already has services those people need. And it's a really incredible development that I think we need to approve immediately. And in the interest of not causing any further delays, that's all I have to say today.
Thank you very much, Brandon. I appreciate
Thank you.
the brevity that the delegates have brought to the discussion today, focused discussion. Councillor Dudas, you had a question for Mr. Bay?
No, Chair, I did not.
Oh, that's my own cursor. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Brandon. Appreciate your presentation today. And our final delegation today will be Joseph Ostrowski. Joseph, welcome to Planning and Housing Committee. You have 5 minutes to make a delegation to the committee.
Thank you. London, Berlin, Sao Paulo, Mexico City, San Francisco, Buffalo, Hartford, Connecticut, Minneapolis, St. Paul, Portland, Oregon, Raleigh, and more closely to home, Toronto and Edmonton. All of these cities have abolished all parking requirements municipally anywhere in the city, not just around transit, not just in the core, but absolutely everywhere in the city, including in their suburbs. London's been doing it since 2004. Berlin's been doing it since 1990. And other cities like Zurich and Paris are working on reducing parking in their city. And the cities have not fallen apart in any of them. They're world-class cities. People want to move to them. In 2015, the city of Ottawa went viral for a cartoon video about parking minimums, which argued that parking minimums hurt small businesses and increase rents, including for affordable housing. And in that year, Ottawa abolished parking minimums in certain parts of the city, which led to headlines all over the world about Ottawa leading in terms of urban policy in this aspect. And now in 2023, we're debating about 15 parking spots that transport engineers on the project and city staff say are unnecessary, while other cities in the world are leading the way in terms of abolishing parking minimums totally and removing surface parking lots and even implementing parking maximums. So people are understandably concerned about changes in their neighborhood, but change is not a bad thing. For example, in my own neighborhood, which is a similar suburb to, it is inside of the Greenbelt, but it's a similar suburban character to the neighborhood in Orleans. There was a lot of opposition when a Shoppers Drug Mart was going to be constructed in my neighborhood, and people were very upset, and there was a lot of concern about it. But now it forms an integral part of the community, and people go there to get groceries and various essentials in their lives. So if this fantastic development is given a chance, I think that in a few years, people won't even remember that this was a controversy right now, and people will appreciate the moments in community building that they gained with new members of the community and neighborhood if this is approved. So today, the Planning Committee is voting on giving 81 families the opportunity to live in Ottawa, including 25 families that are struggling to live anywhere. And I hope that this is just the first step to putting in housing reforms that make Ottawa go viral again from cartoon videos about our housing policies and included in lists of cities that lead in their urban reforms, and that this development will help make Ottawa into the intensified, walkable, transit-oriented, and more affordable city that everyone here passionately believes in. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joseph. Do committee members have any questions for the delegate? I don't see any, so thank you very much for your presentation today. That's it for our public delegations. Does anyone have any questions for staff? Lucy is here to respond to questions. And I see Councillor Troster.
Thank you very much. I'm just wondering if staff or the applicant could let us know, were there any additional costs incurred to this development because of the delay?
Through you, Chair, it would be best directed to Carly, Councillor.
As for staff, anyway, okay, apologize. So I think I will make a comment then, if that's okay. So as we know, affordable housing is a citywide issue and it's a citywide imperative. I just want to stress that I was really moved by the correspondence, if all of you got a chance to take a look at it, from local residents, including parents of children with developmental disabilities who are quite desperate to have their children be able to eventually find a place to live in their community. And just as some of our delegates today said, the project speaks to so many of the policy goals articulated by the official plan. I think it would be a wonderful addition to any neighborhood. So I have a motion I'd like to put forward. So where this is really just to ensure that should the project pass this committee, that it faces no further delays. So whereas the waitlist for affordable housing in Ottawa contains 12,000 households, And whereas Ottawa declared a housing and homelessness emergency in 2020, and whereas the proposed development at 360 Kennedy Lane East will provide much needed, moderately priced rental housing to 81 households in Ottawa. And whereas subsection 35(5) of the procedure bylaw provides that reports from the Planning and Housing Committee that contain recommendations with respect to zoning bylaw amendments may be considered by council without suspension of the rules, provided that the staff report to the standing committee was distributed to all members of council at least 5 calendar days in advance of the meeting of council. Therefore, be it resolved that the zoning bylaw amendment 360 Kennedy Lane East rise for council consideration at the city council meeting of March 22, 2023. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Troster. Before I move on to Laura, can I just ask, is there any legal impediment to that motion being passed today? None whatsoever. Thank you very much. So members can speak to either that motion or to the overall motion. Councillor Dudas.
Yes, actually, now that that motion is on the floor, I have a question for staff. If this was passed today, wouldn't this just go to council on the 22nd regardless?
Through you, Chair, no, I believe it would be the following council date that this one would be eligible for.
Okay. I don't actually have any questions for staff. I did want to speak to this item and say that I am incredibly pleased with the outcome. And I want to thank the developer and city staff for taking a little extra time to thoroughly examine potential solutions to the community's concerns. The result of a more thoughtful approach to these issues that were brought up by over 800 neighbors of this development is going to result in even a more robust transportation plan for the new tenants when they move in, and more education for them about what limitations about parking, but also just better integrating this potential development into the community. I just want to make it absolutely clear, the changes with the provincial government and the changes that they've endorsed with the planning legislation means that we as city councillors, city staff, and the community will have next to no say on many of the development files that we have previously had influence over going forward. Yes, this may result in faster approvals, but it also means that there will be limitations placed on the public's ability to fine-tune development proposals at their earliest stages. And that's why it was important to me and it was important to the community to take a little extra time on this project to get it right. It's never going to be perfect. There's no development that will ever be absolutely perfect in the initial stages, but to take, I think it's been a week and a half to just have these conversations. I think it was absolutely essential and it was the right thing to do. Because when it comes to a development, if we don't get it right at the earliest stages, we get it wrong forever. So I will be supporting this. As I said, I really want to thank the developer. I want to thank city staff for taking that extra time, for doing the due diligence to have that conversation. And while it may not have resolved all of the community members' concerns, it did get us further down the path of being closer to a collaborative approach to this development. So I do want to say that I don't see any issues with us taking some time when it comes to developments, knowing that we have to get it right. So I do want to thank my committee members, and I will be supporting this proposal as it stands before us today.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dudas. Councillor Curry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would repeat everything that Councillor Dudas just said. I mean, the conversation we had here last time was about not about affordable housing or housing. Everybody's like, yeah, okay, we all want that. That's good. Like, that's not even a conversation here. I don't think that we need to have. Everybody agreed with that. It was the details of this application for the parking. Just like in another application we had, it was the details around the garbage. And if people are just going to say, oh, well, all that matters is affordable housing, all that matters is housing, then we'll have every application come through like this. And we'll just say, well, why are we here? Well, is it housing? Oh, well then, yes. Well, it's housing, but there's a problem with the parking. So we wanted to try to sort that out. So, I mean, I have a couple of comments that I'm glad that this has been sorted out, but in my opinion, it should have been sorted out before it came to planning committee last time. Like, now we're back here, delegations had to come back here when it could have been sorted out. The conversations we had with the developer and with staff were, well, could this be sorted out? Well, yes, maybe we consider it. And so we refused to take that and we had it go back. We shouldn't have to do that. This stuff has to be sorted out when it's being discussed. Exactly what Councillor Dudas just said. It has to be right the first time. Now that we don't have site plan approval, this is when it has to be discussed. Well, prior to us, hopefully. So, I mean, I guess I would just say that. I don't want to sit here for the next 4 years on planning committee and talk about, well, oh, do we like affordable housing or do we not? Do we think housing is good or not? Yes, of course we do. But it's about these details now. I think that's what we're going to spend a lot of our time on. So I just would say that as a general comment. So I'll be supporting this today. I'm glad it got worked out. But the other comment I will make is one of the delegations listed all the cities that are saying no parking limits. Well, you know what is going to start to happen as it's already happening is people say, well, I didn't want to, we heard this today, I didn't want to live in the city anymore. It was too busy. So I moved to the suburbs. And then, okay, now the suburbs are getting too busy. So I'll move to the rural. Oh, the rural's getting too busy. I'm going to move to Almond, Arnprior, Renfrew, Pembroke, Petawawa, you name it, as people leave the city where we then lose our tax dollars. So there is a benefit to us making every part of our city livable, not just one particular area, and have people saying, oh, well, I can't believe you made those comments about downtown. You know, oh, you're just a suburban person. Not all of that pitting one against the other is silliness. The reality is everywhere people have to live, you want to make sure it is livable, that they don't then say, okay, well, forget it, I'm moving to Renfrew. Like, that's what we don't want. And that's what's happening. And you listen to the mayors of all those small towns and they're saying, I can't believe the people that are coming out here. Now we don't have enough affordable housing. Now we don't have the services for the people that are coming out here. That is what is actually happening. So, you know, the conversations at planning committee have to be about what is livability and not about just housing, because we all want that. As I was saying to Councillor Leeper ahead of the meeting, you know, the Prime Minister has just said now that $4 billion is coming to cities if they come up with a plan. And I think we can have a plan for that. But at the same time, we'll have to look at these types of details now. And that's my main point here. We all want housing. We all want affordable housing, but it has to make sure, we have to make sure it's livable and people don't leave because it's not. Anyway, I'll be speaking in favor of this. I mean, I've spoken in favor of this. I'll be voting for this.
Thank you very much, Councillor Curry. Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Chair. I concur with the sentiment of the previous two speakers. My comment at committee last time was just that these issues needed to be ironed out. And I was disappointed to hear Councillor Luloff say for 2 years he tried to move the yardsticks with no success. Councillor Dudas thanked staff and the applicant. I was listening to her scratching my head. Both of those parties refused, even at the committee meeting a couple of weeks ago, to go back and have those discussions. It was this committee that forced that conversation to happen. And I will always listen to the local councillor when she or he comes to colleagues and says, listen, there's an issue in my neighborhood that we've tried to address. Can you give me some time between now and the next meeting to force all parties to sit down and have that conversation? Maybe nothing comes out of it, but at least we need to try. And as we know, with the lack of any authority now at site plan, that's why I supported a short reprieve, and will be very open to those requests in the future to make sure that those issues are addressed. My questions for staff today, just this whole notion and political rhetoric about us delaying this project. When was the application filed with the city? Is it 2 years ago? Or was there sort of pre-discussion before the application was formally filed?
Through you, Chair, I believe it was January 2021. There was a pre-consultation meeting ahead of that, but I believe it was January 2021. But I'd ask the applicant to confirm.
What was the date where the applicant had the ability to appeal to the tribunal because timelines were missed?
I don't have that date off the top of my head.
But that date has passed, is that correct?
Yes.
Well past?
Chair, if the application was filed in January 2021, then it would have been likely sometime in April 2021 that it could be appealed to the.
So the applicant in April of 2021, if they wanted to move this file in an expeditious way, could have gone to the tribunal to have a decision.
Chair, I would with respect qualify the word expeditious. So they could have appealed it to the tribunal, but taking an application to the tribunal when it's not ready does not always lead to an expeditious result, Mr. Chair.
Fair enough. Okay, but there are other avenues that could be taken if this applicant was so keen to build. I don't believe for 1 second that this delay between the last meeting, this meeting has delayed this project. We're in the still first day of spring. They still have a number of things that they need to iron out before they start building. This will be built. We've all indicated we strongly support this application and this type of housing in this particular neighborhood. And that will be approved today and has my support. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brockington. Councillor Kavanaugh.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And thank you to the applicants and to community members who took the time to come out today. It strikes me that most of the issues that we're talking about are site plan issues. They're not related to the zoning because it will, but we do need this affordable housing. I see it in communities across, especially this type of affordable housing, which is very family oriented. And that's something that I hope we'll see more of. But what I want to ask is, what can we do as a city in terms of formalizing, working out site plan issues such as parking? What's in our toolbox now that the province has taken away the ability to allow us to pull a delegation of authority?
Chair, through you, it's not actually uncommon, and many municipalities do not actually provide that level of public scrutiny through site plan. So I really do think the opportunity exists at the zoning bylaw stage in collecting the right studies and information that we need to make those decisions at that point. So as losing that ability through site plan, I believe Ottawa to be one of the only municipalities that actually does consult on site plans.
That's good to know. So it's about working it out ahead of time, like having public meetings and listening to what are the concerns and what's doable and what isn't. For example, in terms of parking and that sort of thing, but also the fact that that people do live without cars. And we heard a couple of the people who here today who were on that situation. And I lived in a housing co-op myself, you only had one parking spot. That's pretty normal for those situations. So this will be a change of culture, but also the fact that families can't afford those other houses in the neighborhood. They can't move into that neighborhood because they can't afford those houses. So I appreciate all the work that's been done and the recognition that we need these changes so that families can live in these communities and enjoy the features. Thank you.
Derek?
Mr. Chair, there's been a number of comments made around the ability to influence site plan. And I do think that is something that is worth addressing in a broader sense, in that certainly it is correct that through Bill 109, the ability for councillors to pull delegated authority and bring the item to committee and council has been removed. Committee members, as all members of council and members of the public, still have an opportunity to provide input, to provide commentary, and raise issues through that site plan process that staff will endeavor to work through and resolve to the best of everyone's satisfaction as much as possible. I would also point out that the number of site plan applications that actually came forward to committee and council has been extremely limited, and so 99% of issues and concerns do get resolved through the traditional site plan process without the need to come forward to committee and council, and staff are still willing and happy to work with members of committee and council to resolve issues that come up. Albeit there will be technical issues where there may be a difference of opinion, but the door is still open for committee members and all council members to raise issues and seek to have them resolved through the site plan process.
Thank you very much. And thanks, Mr. Moody. That's certainly been my experience. I know staff, the process of consulting on site plan can often be as rich and full of meetings as the process of consulting on zoning. So it's a point well made. I don't see any further questions. What I'd like to do is vote on the main item first and then on Councillor Droster's motion to accelerate bringing that to council if we can. Is the main zoning report carried?
Carried.
Thank you. And is Councillor Troster's motion on bringing that to council this week carried?
Carried.
Carried. Thank you very much, committee members, and thank you everyone who made a presentation to the committee today. And I know we have a significant amount of correspondence on that as well. So the last item on our substantive agenda today is the municipal housing pledge. And I believe Mr. Fu will be making a presentation.
Chair, I'll just introduce Mr. Fu and Mr. Wise, who will be presenting. So while they set up, I just wanted to indicate as part of the overall objective of building 1.5 million homes across Ontario, the provincial government has provided Ottawa with a municipal housing target of 151,000 new homes in the next 10 years. As a result of some distribution issues the province had, the pledge deadline was extended from March 1st to March 22nd. So this item will rise to council this Wednesday. The pledge and the various actions that are outlined within it will show how the city can facilitate the delivery of those 151,000 new homes. And it also complements the housing action plan that was recently released by the mayor. While the tasks ahead of us collectively are not insignificant, you will see that the city has a healthy supply on its books. We've initiated many actions that would allow us to stimulate further supply, streamline our processes, and build on and form new partnerships. As well, we'll be monitoring as we go. So as I mentioned, with me today are David Wise, the Director of Economic Development and Long Range Planning, and Royce Fu, Manager of Policy Planning. And I'll turn it over to them for a brief presentation.
Thank you. So community members, before you use Ottawa's housing pledge, this presentation, the first half of this presentation will focus on the nature of the housing targets, Ottawa's historical housing permits that have been issued, the role of Ottawa in the housing market, and the number of stakeholders and other factors that go into building housing. And then the second part of the presentation will go into a bit more depth on the housing pledge. So in terms of the province's goal, this government wants to build 1.5 million new homes by 2031. And through Bill 23, they've established housing targets for a number of large municipalities in the province. Here are the top 6 on that list, of which Ottawa has a target of 151,000 homes by 2031. Historically, Ottawa has averaged about 7,400 permits since 2001. But as we can see in the blue, in this graph here, everything in the green are actual historical permits issued for a calendar year. And those permits have increased in the last few years. The orange bars represent the target if it's averaged annually to 2031. So we're on the right track to increasing the number of permits being issued. 2022 was the highest we've seen with 12,600 permits issued. But the target is still a little bit aggressive in terms of what we've seen historically, representing about a 19% increase if we were to hit 15,000 a year to 2031. In comparison to our official plan projections, our official plan projects about 76,000 market houses to be built between 2021 and 2031. If we include some collective dwellings, it'd be a bit higher, but nonetheless, just over half of what the targets ask for to 2031. This really accelerates our official plan projection. We project to build that same number of houses in the 2041, 2046 time period. So we're looking at about a 10-year increase in the number of houses being built. What is important to note, though, this is a target and does not replace the official plan projection. The city does not have to update our official plan or our projections to match the target. The pledge is not mandatory. However, the province has indicated there is a correlation between municipalities that provide pledges and funding for growth-related costs as a result of Bill 23 changes. In terms of housing market factors, there are many stakeholders and things that go into the construction of housing. So there are regulations from all levels of government that influence the construction of housing, available land or sites, builders, the capacity and the cost of labor, the cost and availability of materials for construction, interest rates play a role, the number of buyers and the number of buyers that have access to equity. The city's role in the housing market, if we look at the housing market as in terms of a pie, the city's role has one slice, right? It's really focuses on that permissible supply through our policies and our regulations. It's also processing applications. How long does it take to get an application from concept to construction? And also providing local infrastructure, pipe services and access to our transportation network and other soft services to build the complete communities that we all strive for. So if we look at our existing approvals to supply in terms of that permissible role, if we just look at the development pipeline, there are three categories that staff have identified. There's those that are under construction, those that have been approved by this committee or its predecessor, registered and draft approved plans of subdivision, and also active applications for zoning and draft plan of subdivision that this committee has either heard or will hear in the future. So those three categories are over 150,000 together. So this does not include a potential theoretical supply for underutilized buildings, right? So if we think about some of our arterial main streets where we have commercial sites where the zoning does permit residential units, this does not include that type of theoretical potential zoning. So if we look at the distribution of the supply, if we were to build 151,000 homes by 2031, about 2/3 would be through the urban area through intensification. Less than a third would be through greenfields, and then 5% on rural lands. Otto's housing pledge focuses on 4 action categories for the construction of 151 new houses by 2031. The first is stimulate the supply of housing through our guiding policies and regulations. Second is form strategic partnerships with senior governments and our housing providers. 3 is to streamline our governance and approvals process. And 4 is to monitor and report on our commitments. In terms of stimulating supply of housing, this really speaks to the guiding policies and official plan and the regulations in our zoning bylaw. We want to provide the diversity of housing options by a variety of building types. It's not just single attached or row houses or condominium apartments, but a variety of all built forms. We also want to provide this permissible supply geographically throughout the city, not just concentrating them at specific pockets within the urban area or at the periphery of the urban area. A lot of this has been accomplished in the official plan already through its guiding policies. We're now looking to the new zoning bylaw update to implement these permissions and densities in the official plan. And there's also a focus on permitting low-rise missing middle housing that's not there today. We also continue updating our infrastructure master plan and transportation master plan to identify those projects in our development charges background study. So we have an idea of how those projects can be financed to the extent possible through Bill 23. We want to form strategic partnerships with provincial and federal governments to access funding so we can move, reduce application processing timelines, provide us the resources to do that, or recover costs from new infrastructure. We also want to continue working with our nonprofit housing builders and providers so that we can achieve our affordable housing targets and support innovative new housing programs, such as working with the Canadian Urban Institute and CMHC on office to residential conversions in the downtown. We want to streamline our approvals process. So we want a new zoning bylaw that is more permissive, that speaks to that that quantity, that quantum, and more clear. And that really speaks to reducing the number of amendments required to move projects forward. We want to implement Bill 109. We are very far ahead compared to other municipalities in terms of where we are at with Bill 109 so that we can have complete applications processed within 90 days for zoning bylaw and 60 days within the site plan application. We will look at other improvements to further reduce timelines, such as piloting a community planning permit system that will strive to target a 45-day turnaround period from a complete application. We want to invest in having a focused internal team that will look at how we can provide further efficiencies and timeline reductions, or even implement some of the lessons learned from that community planning permit pilot project. We will increase our dialogue with the housing providers, identify where are the pinch points in the process and work towards viable solutions to get applications move forward quicker. And community stakeholders, provide them more information earlier in the process, we can try and resolve issues sooner. We want to monitor our commitments, and this means tracking the actions in our pledge, tracking the housing supply in our development pipeline, and tracking the progress towards the housing target. So in terms of next steps, should committee endorse the housing pledge, it would go to council consideration this Wednesday, March 22nd. Ask the mayor, authorize the mayor to sign the pledge and submit to the province same day. So in terms of our housing pledge, we want to fulfill our role to allow for the construction of 151,000 new homes by 2031 by stimulating the supply of housing, forming strategic partnerships, streamline our governance approvals process, and monitor our reports and commitments. Now, the city cannot achieve Ottawa's housing market target alone. Even if we hit all of our actions 100%, we still need the commitment and availability of other stakeholders to achieve our targets. And also the alignment of other housing factors. Interest rates, the state of the economy also play significant roles in the production of housing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the presentation. And there are a number of questions from councillors. First up is Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you very much for the presentation, and I appreciate that we're talking housing and we have a pledge. But I want to focus on nonprofit housing and what specifically are we doing to encourage nonprofit housing, particularly working with our partners. And obviously, I was chair of Ottawa Community Housing, and we're the sole shareholder of Ottawa Community Housing. How are we working to strengthen those relationships and build more deeply affordable housing? Since we know that much of the affordable housing by developers is based on the CMHC definition, but we know that we need more deeply affordable.
So, Mr. Chair, there are a couple of things that we identify in the report in terms of the affordable housing component. I think first and foremost is revisiting the long-range financial plan to get the financing available to help those housing providers with those for the construction of housing. The second is housing services will be working with our corporate real estate office to identify those municipal surplus lands that are best suited for housing and try to advance those sites, make them available to our housing providers through housing services. And then finally, we have some guiding principles in the official plan that really speak to trying to provide some additional processing efficiencies. So we could perhaps look at pre-zoning some of these sites through a staff-initiated zoning bylaw amendment so that they are ready when that funding is available for those sites.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I know that that is one concern that has plagued Ottawa Community Housing, who who are just getting started really on the development side. They, in the past, they were just considered to be landlords of the 15,000 units they have. But it takes a long time to, and often projects are earmarked in terms of time, because when you're waiting for federal funding, like Rapid Housing Initiative, you have to be able to be ready now for shovel ready. So I appreciate that. Is this like, ahead of the line kind of help? Because obviously, how are we going to do it when we've got the same number of staff? Like, I just want to know how are these efficiencies going to be done?
Yeah, Councillor, maybe if I can just interject through the chair. There are a number of things, of course, as we work our way through the Bill 109 processes. We always have to make sure that we're coupling that with the recognition of the changes through Bill 109 and Bill 23. Housing services and the affordable home provisions would be subject to the DC and cash and lieu parkland and CBC relief that Bill 23 also builds into the development charges bylaw. So there's a financial relief the province has already built in. As well as you work your way through the Bill 109 processes that our colleagues in Development Review Services are implementing as well, there is consideration for how we can provide a fast tracking mechanism through that pre-consultation process. They, of course, would still be subject to the very clear timelines that Bill 109 lays out for site plan control. So that portion would be subject to the legislative framework there. But that initial piece, as it moves its way through Development Review Services, that would be something that our Development Review colleagues are looking to see what changes they might be able to make.
I appreciate that, and I hope that we can continue to work together. I think there's a lot of opportunities out there, but it's just been kind of siloed, and I hope that that's broken down and to make it more of a partnership. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kavanaugh. Can I just ask, can you refresh my memory as to when we expect further refinements to our planning approvals process in context of Bill 109 to come forward for our consideration?
And Mr. Chair, I believe the report is scheduled for July 2nd, June 2nd.
Yeah, June. Q2, we're targeting June.
Yeah, thank you very much. Councillor Curry.
Thank you. Just following on that. So what I understood from Prime Minister's speech the other day was there's $4 billion specifically for municipalities that have a plan in place, June, an action plan submitted that's specifically for affordable housing. Councillor Kavanaugh was very specific, whatever municipalities have that plan ready to go by June. And so my question to you is not some of the work we're doing right here for the province the exact same for the federal, but the federal is specifically affordable housing?
Mr. Chair, there is quite a bit of overlap, and certainly this does set us up for applications for the Housing Action Fund, certainly. They're not quite the same situation. That is a federal program that you do need to run through for the Rapid Housing Initiative. And that is also with respect to having shovel-ready projects that are basically ready to go, that you can invest in that funding. But they also want to see that there is that municipal commitment towards the delivery of housing, and that we are getting all of the pieces together from a whole city approach in order to deliver on those things. So there is a lot of commonality between the two, and certainly having a document that affirms the city commitment towards housing is something that will have weight with the federal initiative as well.
Thank you for that. From our presentation from Ottawa Community Housing, it seemed to me they had quite a lot in the pipeline ready to go. So to me, I was listening to that announcement the other day thinking Ottawa Community Housing can just go now. Let's hope. But anyways, my comment, I first want to say for people who weren't on this planning committee last year, in 2022, Canada North, we approved 5,100 units, 5,100. So if we did that across 24 wards, that would be almost 122,000 houses in 1 year. In 1 year, right? So part of me thinks this is unrealistic, what we're pledging here, but then another part of me thinks it is possible. It's just that what I'm hearing in Canada North now is that we may have approved 5,100, but whether they will actually be built based on interest rates and construction challenges and all the rest of it is a totally different story. So I find this, I mean, obviously I'll support this pledge. I find this strange though, because we are really just saying we're pledging, like the reality component of this, any municipality can say this, you know, that's the thing. So I think we'll be in a grouping with a lot of other municipalities that are saying, sure, yeah, we'll do that too. No problem. but whether it can actually happen. One question I just had in terms of the information we received is there was a comment in it, and I'm not sure if it was just about the report, but that there are no legal implications or challenges. And I know some of the things that are on that list that actually are tied up in legal problems right now, but they're on the list nonetheless. But what was that comment in relation to? Was it actually a comment that there are no legal problems with any of the draft applications right now? And probably it'd be Tim Mark.
As Mr. Herwire indicated, this is not mandatory on the part of the city. And thus there are no legal implications following from it. There certainly will be steps that need to be taken through the process, but the actual adoption of the pledge, there are no legal impediments to.
Thank you very much for that clarification. I just wondered exactly what it applied to. All right, well, I think we say this, we pledge, and we see how it goes. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Councillor Curry. Councillor Lowe?
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Looks like one of the slides shows that there's an existing amount of permits that have been approved and development. I don't remember which slide it was, but the number was 153,600. Yeah, that slide, 153,600. So basically, does this mean without the pledge, we're going to hit that target anyway? I'm supporting the pledge, but does this mean without the pledge, we're going to hit that target anyway?
So, Mr. Chair, it's a complicated, as the housing market's complicated, the answer to that question is also complicated. Like I said, there are many stakeholders and things that need to align in the housing market in order for the actual construction to move forward. We look at what the province is identifying in the pledge, which is one of the supporting documents here. They're really looking for municipalities to provide a permissive supply, to streamline approvals processes, to remove barriers such as infrastructure for the construction of those homes. The pledge, even though that's the target set by Bill 23, the pledge is actually looking at some of these actions just to move those things faster or remove barriers. So I think the province is really looking for actions by municipalities on our role for the housing market to move that forward. So if there was sufficient capacity in the housing market and everything else lined up, we would theoretically be able to meet the target through the development pipeline by 2031.
Just to supplement that a little bit, we do have to remember, of course, that we are subject to provincial policy statement requirements to always have a constant ready supply of land that is always moving its way through. So as Royce has said, there's a certain amount of land that is constantly going through an approval process. The projects that are constantly working their way through the development pipeline, will they actually be constructed? Will they actually be purchased? That's something that, of course, is subject to market forces that are beyond the direct municipal control. But we always have to keep in mind that we are looking at a constantly rolling state of the housing continuum as it flows its way through.
Thank you. And a follow-up question on a different topic. In the report that's going to come out in June, this might be more of a curiosity, but the surplus sites the surplus city sites, I should note, that are noted on page 14 of the report. Could those be included in the report as well?
So, Mr. Chair, this report was a collaborative effort amongst different departments. So we can take that back to Housing Services to see if those sites can be provided in that report.
I think it'd help us see what kind of sites, like how we look at these sites and identify them as surplus. So, all right, thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lowe. Councillor Brockington.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. If I'm a private home developer, I build 95% of supply in the city. Private home developers build our homes. I own oodles of land. I own significant land in the city, and I control the supply that goes onto the market. And my job is to maximize the profit I can make in my homes, not to play along with provincial strategy, although they want to look like good players. Their goal is to get as much money out of their product as possible. They could triple, quadruple their units if they wanted to, because they have the land, but they look at all the factors that goes into what they sell housing for and what that profit they can make on it. And they establish a supply number to maximize what they can get out of it. And that's the challenge, is they control supply in this city because they want to realize is the maximum amounts that they can for their product. So have we reached out to private developers and said, look, we've got ambitious targets in this province. We have ambitious targets in the city. Are you going to increase your building intentions? Like, have we ascertained from them what their intentions are over the next decade?
So, Mr. Chair, we do have a letter from the Greater Ottawa Home Building Association as part of this report that identifies that they want to cooperate with the city to reach these targets. But like I said, there are many factors that go into that as well. While they control the supply, there also has to be the amount of buyers with access to equity, labor, materials that are also can be out of their control as well. So many factors have to line up, but we do have a letter of support from the Greater Ottawa Home Builders Association to work together to achieve this target.
In River Ward alone, major developments, the Nelson Dairy, 6 skyscrapers hugging the Queensway, deferred because of market conditions. The secondhand auto sales across the street from Westgate Tower, deferred because of market conditions. Canoe Bay, remember Canoe Bay across from Mooney's Bay? That's gone belly up. They're looking at a new owner for that. Norbury Residences, right beside where I live, we approved. This file is about 12 years old, market conditions. So we have major approved developments just in River Ward where they're waiting. They're waiting for ideal market conditions before they build. And I'm sure there are multiple examples. We had a development in your ward, Chair, where he pulled out because, again, market conditions didn't look like it was going to be profitable for them. So when I sit at the AMO table, I hear from my colleagues about how extremely ambitious the provincial targets are. Some regional chairs, mayors, councillors think their municipality or region may be able to come close to their allocated targets. Others have absolutely no idea how they're going to get there. I'm just worried that the province gets to set this target. The province is going to tie our funding that they've cut from us to the pledge. And then when municipalities or regions don't make it, they're going to say, oh, it's the municipality or region's fault. They didn't do enough for their own targets to be met, and they didn't contribute to the provincial target. I just see this being set up that when targets aren't achieved 10, 15 years from now, the province is going to point their finger and say, it's your fault, not ours. And yet they're the ones that are contributing to significant revenue loss. So that said, I believe that targets should be created. I do believe that you need to aim towards something. And I do support a provincial target and even municipal or regional targets, but they've got to be reasonable, achievable, and realistic. And I will do everything I can to ensure that we build as much housing as possible and we achieve those targets. We are in a housing and homelessness crisis. And as my colleagues have pointed out, we need a diversity of housing. This is very, very important. But I just want us to be realistic. And I think we have an obligation to the public, whether it's a pledge or not, we have to make sure that we're doing everything we can to get to that point. So I just wanted to put that caution on the table this morning, but Mr. Chair, I will be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brockington. Just before I move on to Councillor Dudas, I want to make sure that the question that you posed received a clear answer. And I heard a very clear question, which was, have we heard from the home builders that they are committed to building more housing, accelerating the rate at which they're building housing? And the answer that I heard was that, they've supported our pledge. That's different from, I think, the answer that Councillor Brockington was seeking, which was a yes or no as to whether there's a commitment to accelerate the building of housing, depending on the conditions that we create for them. If we follow through, and I know we will, on the constituent parts of our pledge, particularly as they relate to zoning permissions and process improvements, do we have that commitment from the home builders in Ottawa that they will match our efforts with greater efforts to build more housing more quickly?
Mr. Chair, that's probably something that would be best if we actually had a home building representative actually come to the table and actually speak to their intention. Of course, they're private businesses. There's not much that we can speak on. We can't speak on their behalf. That's up to them. However, we know that they've been very actively engaged with the city through the official plan process. They continue to be very actively engaged through the new zoning process. And one of the things that's come up consistently time and time again from them is risk and uncertainty. The challenges with respect to building a high-rise development, an apartment construction development, is these are long timelines that go through a very lengthy approvals process. And they also have significant exposure to changes in interest rates, market rates, construction prices, all kinds of other market dynamics that are associated with those things. They have expressed in the past that there is a significant amount of interest in looking at missing middle type development, mid-rise type development, things like that, that have the ability to have much shorter timelines, different construction rates, potentially different business models attached to those things. So if we look at the housing pledge and we talk about what we are doing with respect to the zoning bylaw to allow ourselves to have those opportunities for permissions, really it does come down to how do we as a municipality remove some of the risk challenges from the home building industry so that they can have more assurance as to what the regulatory climate is for them going forward and what the timelines are that are going to be going forward so they can work out their performance in better detail. That's about as much as from the municipality side that we can do. We would have to have a home building representative here to speak to more directly the councillor's question.
That's fair. And thank you very much. And I'm sorry, Laura, I didn't mean to delve that deeply on it, but I wanted to make sure that Councillor Brockington got the answer he's looking for. Please go ahead.
Absolutely no problem. We know Ottawa has a deficit of housing, particularly missing middle, as we just heard, and affordable housing. And I absolutely see no issue with setting an ambitious target and removing the obstacles to allow that to happen. One of the things, though, I do want to point out, and I have a question for staff. So I will be supporting this. I think it's absolutely necessary. We have to strive for this because we need housing in our city. One of the things is, though, development needs supporting infrastructure. And historically, the city has had a lackluster response to that. We've built whole subdivisions without supporting or increasing or improving the infrastructure to accommodate that growth. We've had infill projects that haven't provided amenities close by that supported that growth. We see those changes reflected in the official plan. Now we're in the process of talking about fast-tracking developments that will require fast-tracking infrastructure. So my question to staff is, you mentioned before that with Bill 23, there's going to be financial relief provided. There's going to be other avenues for relief through the province. Does any of that relief support the city when we're looking to investing in the infrastructure to accommodate the growth in the development that we're now committed to facing?
I'll try and do the first answer, and then if my answer is unsatisfactory, then Royce will correct me. So just with respect to some of the challenges that we've been going through, we have done the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, Park Recreation and Community Facilities Master Plan, sorry about that, last year, which laid out where the community facilities, parks, all of those pieces would be going through. Of course, the changes from Bill 23 the amendments to the Parkland Dedication Bylaw have amended that. We will need to be going back through and doing those revisions for those. We also have the Transportation Master Plan and Infrastructure Master Plan as well that are currently in progress right now that will be coming back to this committee and council later on this year as they move their way through. With respect to Bill 23, we do have to note that it does change the game. With respect to the allowance for up to 3 residential units permitted on any parcel of urban serviced lot. And 2 of those units, if they're additional dwelling units as allowed by Bill 23, are exempt from DCs and cash in lieu of parkland. How that ripples its way through is something that we are still trying to wrap our heads around along with industry. That does affect all neighborhoods across the city and all zones. That's something that we are going to be coming back to with council as part of the financial implications leading into the budget 2024 and also leading into our DC bylaw update for next year. So that's not something that we that's something that we need to be thinking about now, and certainly it is on staff's mind. But that is something that we would bring back to council later this year as part of that budget process when we really start to understand what are the financial implications that are built into Bill 23 and how that affects in turn our ability to support and service the lands and also to provide the amenities that our residents expect, both existing and future residents as they go forward. There are a lot of dimensions to this. Fortunately, it's not a pat answer, but it is a difficult situation that the municipality needs to constantly adapt to. Royce, did you want to add to that?
I think that's excellent context, Mr. Chair. In addition, the province has not provided any details on what level of funding would be provided with the pledge and to make up for any shortfalls from Bill 23, other than a commitment to make municipalities unequal whole. So I think that's what we're working with right now is just that lack of details. But moving forward, we position ourselves to access that funding.
Just one final comment, just with respect to the back to Councillor Curry's question with respect to the Housing Action Fund. That is an opportunity as well for the city to look through and see if there are significant infrastructure investments that we cannot necessarily pay for out of our own municipal coffers, but we can in fact actually apply for some federal support to provide assistance for some of those infrastructure projects that can help to stimulate that housing supply. So it is not necessarily DCs or property taxes. There is different levels of federal government that we will be able to explore going forward for how we deliver on our commitments.
I appreciate that we're in the state of a bit of flux right now, and there's a lot of uncertainties. And I appreciate your response. It really drives home the fact that we don't necessarily know how this is going to play out. I wish we had that in front of us today. I'll be honest with you, because, you know, as I said, I support this. I think we have to be ambitious. We all know we need more housing of all sorts in our city. So we have to strive for that. What I just don't want to see is us making a pledge and not being able to fulfill the most basic of requirements, providing the roads, the sidewalks, the parks, the transit, that like all the things, the water mains, all the things that support this intensity. And we don't exactly know how we're going to fund it. So what I would say is I will leave it at that. I will be following up likely with the chair. I think that he likely has it in his mind already to provide ongoing advocacy towards the province to ensure that we're getting that funding, that we're being made whole. Once again, I don't want to see that communities are being built or a building's being built and we don't have the supporting infrastructure to accommodate it, because at the end of the day, that just goes back onto our taxpayers, and then we have to support that through our own budget. So it is a concern to me. As I said, I do think we need to support today's pledge because once again, we need the housing, but we also need to understand how we're going to support that ongoing development and that intensity in our community. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dudas. Councillor Kitson and Councillor Troster.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Dudas, for your question and comments. In growth areas, this is a huge concern. We simply cannot build complete communities without that critical infrastructure. So that is going to be very important going forward. To be clear on what we're voting on here, this pledge is basically asking us to endorse Bill 23. Am I correct in understanding that? And if we don't, we lose the ability to ask for financial assistance for impacts related to the new legislation.
So, Mr. Chair, I would not characterize the pledge as endorsing Bill 23. The pledge responds to what the province has specifically asked for municipalities to pledge to support the housing targets that is established in Bill 23. Bill 23 has many other components that are not just the planning act, but other acts as well. So my comment would be the pledge is really focused on the housing targets within Bill 23 and municipalities' roles to providing those housing and how municipalities can fulfill their role within the housing market.
Okay. I agree with Councillor Brockington. I am uneasy about how this pledge might kind of get used against us, but there's some really good things in the pledge, so I do want to support it. But piggybacking on some of the questions my colleagues have been poking at regarding industry support, I know that the industry has been critical of our new parkland bylaw, the high performance development standards, the vacant property tax. So is there any indication at this point that the industry, I mean, obviously there's market conditions as well, but is the industry slowing down? Have we seen that yet? Or is it all kind of business as usual so far?
Yeah, Councillor, that through the chair, that is an excellent question. We are going to be releasing the next quarterly update on the housing stats. Will be coming forward to the Finance Committee fairly soon. We have, of course, seen a change in the market conditions from the interest rates, things like that. Overall, we're looking at about a 35% drop in market activity. Significantly, as Councillor Brockington has noted, a lot of apartment construction projects have put the brakes on over the last little bit. That's not unexpected. We've all seen the changes in the market conditions and interest rates and those parameters. And of course, we monitor those on a quarterly basis and report back on those.
Okay, and that's being factored into the pledge, or?
So, Mr. Chair, as staff has indicated, these are other factors outside the municipality's control that need to align in order for the construction of 151,000 homes by 2031. So if the interest rates are changing, all we can do is continue to provide that supply, and then the other factors in the market have to adjust to bring back that construction of houses. So this pledge only focuses on the city's role, not the entire housing market that's beyond the city's influence.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm not sure if we're setting ourselves up for success, given the broader context, but, I think we all want to support, in an ideal world, we want to support what's in the bill. We want to see that happen, but I just don't know if that's the path we're on, given all those considerations, but I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dudas. Councillor Troster.
Thank you so much, Chair. I just have a question. Does either the bill or this pledge have a specific definition of what you mean by home? Is there a number of square feet? Is there a number of bedrooms? Is there a
Mr. Chair, there's
size?
no details on what is a home or what would be considered to be a metric for a home.
Okay. The reason I asked this is I just wanted to flag something that I'm seeing all the time in Somerset Ward, which is one of the most densely populated wards in the city. We're accepting a ton of densification, which I support, but some of that densification does lead to displacement. So we end up in a situation where there are a number of moderately priced rentals that are a little bit larger, where families or a couple could easily live, and they're replaced by buildings that are technically taller and technically more dense, but the homes that they're being replaced with are 500 square foot bachelors or even smaller. I just had a consultation last week for a proposed development in my ward where there will be displacement of tenants, and there is not equivalent housing for those folks to move into. We will lose them in our neighborhoods. So the reason I ask this is I'm just wondering if, as part of the pledge, if housing acquisition has been explored at all by staff, because according to Carleton University Professor Steve Pomeroy's research, we're losing 7 affordable homes for everyone that we build. And so in some cases, it's because of demolitions and replacement with much smaller and more expensive homes, or because we have a lack of tenancy control in Ontario. So somebody moves out, the landlord has absolutely no limit on the amount that they can jack the rent. So when I knocked on doors in Somerset Ward, there would be people living in the exact same size apartment with $1,000 difference in their rent, just depending on when they moved in. So I know that we had a presentation from the Ottawa Community Land Trust when we were having our own budget consultations here. And I'm just wondering if housing acquisition is anything that was considered for this pledge.
So, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make two comments as a response. The first is we're proposing to track permits and their net residential permits. So we actually remove any demolitions that result from new permits. So that captures some of what the councillor is describing as removal of existing to be replaced by new development. Going forward, though, we do identify in forming strategic partnerships, for example, of looking for new houses. So whether that is on through office conversions in the downtown or working with their federal colleagues to unlock some of their own surplus lands and identify that for residential, market and non-market affordable in conjunction with our own municipal surplus lands as well. So those are some of the actions we are proposing to include as part of that action category of forming strategic partnerships.
Just want to supplement that a little bit as well, in that this was part of the challenge that we did outline within the official plan. And also, as we worked our way through and ramping up for the zoning bylaw, is also the issue of the concentration of where we allow development to occur and where we don't. And so that's always been an ongoing challenge. Prior to Bill 23, only 5% of our residential zone land actually allowed for anything more than 3 units to be built on top of it. And the concentration of that development in terms of high rises, apartments, construction, things like that in certain wards was, of course, is an ongoing challenge that we see. And that's where we see that that competitive fight for those square meters of land that are available to maximize the value out of those lands. So the policies in the official plan do look at us to spread that diversity of housing opportunity across the city. Bill 23 put together a bit of a down payment on that by now allowing 100% of all residential service lands to have 3 units on them. 6 units in the case of lands that are currently zoned R2. So that's something that the province has done and is currently in force right now. But there is certainly still more of that equity argument that needs to reprocess through as we work our way through implementing that official plan process. And the intention of that is also to, again, provide that opportunity for other housing opportunities to expand across. So we hopefully maybe don't necessarily see a lot of that pressure that is being put on only a few neighborhoods. And spread the load a little bit more.
Thank you very much. And I certainly support increasing density across the entire city, not just in the downtown wards. So I will be supporting this pledge. I think it's a good thing. But, you know, as Councillor Kavanaugh was saying, you know, supply alone is not going to increase affordability at all. We can build and build and build, and that's not going to make a dent in the wait list for affordable housing. So I really look forward to seeing us increase our investment in working with nonprofits and with Ottawa Community Housing to build the kind of housing that will actually solve chronic homelessness in our city. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Troster. I have a few questions of my own. I just want to make sure I understand and that the committee understands the nature of the pledge that we're being asked to approve today. So what we are pledging to, if I understand correctly, is to facilitate the completion over the next until 2031 of 151,000 homes. I think, does the province recognize that we can't deliver completed homes? All we can do is facilitate their completion.
Mr. Chair, I won't be able to answer on behalf of the province, but the pledge is characterizing the city's role in terms of housing, providing housing. So the pledge is really focusing on that and the actions to move housing forward within our role. And we certainly hope that the province could recognize that if we do our part as much as we can, that there are other things that also need to occur to produce that many houses.
Is there anything in this pledge that we wouldn't otherwise be committed to? When I look at the list, it's these are actions that the city has already determined and the council has already determined it wants to undertake for the most part.
Chair, that's very true. And that's actually one of the really laudable pieces of where we are at. We are ahead of the curve when we talk about all of the municipalities across Ontario. We do have a new official plan that supports many of these policies that are in place. We are already undergoing work on expanding those zoning permissions. That is not the case in a number of municipalities that are across Ontario that are going to have to do considerably more work with structuring their policies, structuring their programs to get themselves into shape. So that is something where we have the opportunity here where we do have a number of those programs in place. What this does is collect them all into one place, which in itself, as the ability to focus the city's efforts on housing supply, has positive value.
Did staff contemplate in the creation of the formulation of this pledge actions that it might take to try to accelerate the completion of housing in the city, but that it chose not to? Or chose not to recommend, I guess.
Not entirely sure how to answer that, Chair.
I mean, these are a number of actions that council has already determined to undertake. Do staff feel that there is more that we could be doing in order to try to facilitate the creation of even more housing?
I think, Chair, that as it goes along, the housing action plan is the opportunity, and the municipal housing pledge, again, is the opportunity for us to collectively look at as a city and as a department on what those actions might be. As they flow through, staff will, of course, be looking at how we can break those down and look at additional opportunities. If those additional opportunities arrive, as we said, as we explore the development review approvals process through Bill 109, we see other opportunities there. We would certainly bring those back to council's attention.
Okay. And I want to make sure I understand a fascinating part of the report well, which is that there are something like 153,000 units that you've identified that are in a very advanced state of the necessary approvals to be ready to pull a building permit. Have I characterized that correctly?
That's correct, Mr. Chair, and also within the timelines as well. So 2031. So that means that in many of the future, none of the future neighborhoods that council adopted in the new official plan or that the province added, they would not come online by 2031. So this is, you characterize that well, but also with that time horizon, when could a building permit be issued by 2031?
The comprehensive zoning bylaw review is going to add further zoning permissions that should stimulate the creation of even more housing, whether that is through greater intensity to low-rise scale in our neighborhoods, on minor corridors, or around transit oriented demand, or around our transit stations. Do staff have, and I'm trying to think back to our growth management discussions of the last term, but can staff ballpark for me the number of additional units that could be completed by 2031 in the wake of the passage of new permissions through the comprehensive zoning bylaw review?
Councillor, again, the challenge that we have with respect to the changes from Bill 23, but also the changes that are with respect to the zoning bylaws we go through, is that the city has collectively, the housing industry in Ottawa has been very, very good at building high-rise construction, and it has been very, very good at building singles and semis. It has not been very good at building missing middle because we have not provided the opportunity to do it. And so there is certainly, there is townhouse development. There are missing middle developments that have gone forward, but they're fairly few and far between, and they tend to be more bespoke developments, one-off type developments. So the question will be, as we move our way through, is to see how our home building industry reacts to these new opportunities, how the work out business case models for how to produce these types of housing, and what the uptake in those might be. We have seen in some other cities, been watching Toronto with some interest to see some of the changes that they've been making. Again, they have very much the same challenge that we do, though, as well, again, with a significant disparity between what they do allow and what restrictions are in place with respect to that home building industry opportunity there. So really, it really is going to be a monitoring exercise to see how the industry reacts to these new permissions, how they're able to generate the business models to do these things in a more significant number and volume than has been done before, but also in terms of from the municipality side to make sure that we've got the rules in place to get the quality of development that we're also expecting. So not a clean answer, Mr. Chair, but it is something that, again, this is new territory for all of us. And it is going to be a case where we're going to have to work with our industry colleagues and see what that uptake is, see how that business model evolves, and see how we can all work together to make sure that it functions appropriately within our neighborhoods.
Okay. I don't mean to belabor the point, but do we know how the province is going to measure us for success in achieving what we've pledged to do? And I'm thinking here of that disparity between a number in our report that says there are something like 153,000 approved units at an advanced state of approval. And then when I look at the CMHC's most recent numbers for housing starts in Ottawa, there were 64 in January. Right. Clearly, something is going on beyond the municipality's ability to control when there are just 64 housing starts in the city in the month. Are we going to be held accountable for the achievement of something that is in the hands of external market forces or market decisions by the developers themselves?
So, Mr. Chair, there is nothing in the pledge identifies the specific details of that. However, if I was to read the pledge does not identify specifically that the target shall be achieved. The pledge identifies how municipalities can fulfill their roles into moving forward with the construction of that housing. So one interpretation could be if municipalities identify the actions that they pledge to do for their role in the housing market, and they're able to show some measure of success in that, then their pledge has been fulfilled.
So with respect to Councillor Kitz's question, in terms of are we setting ourselves up for success, my argument would be that we are. We are pledging to undertake actions that we are largely as a council already pledged to do. Through our policies in the official plan and other policy documents. We already have a significant construction pipeline approved if developers are willing to put shovels in the ground. The risks to the city of taking this pledge are, I would suggest, minimal. And I think this is certainly a good opportunity for council to make clear that it is committed over the course of the next 10 years to building more housing, whether that is market housing or whether that is affordable housing. So that's my characterization of it, is that this pledge is in fact setting us up for success. I could go on for days, you guys know, but I will leave it there. Are there any other questions from committee members? So on the recommendations of the report, is that motion carried? Wonderful.
Carried.
Deal with that on Wednesday at council then. Excellent. Find my script. Thank you very much, members. That was a productive discussion. We don't have any in-camera items today. Are there any notices of motion? We haven't received any up to this point. Are there any inquiries? None received. We have no other business. Are we adjourned? Thank you very much.